Welcome back to another edition of the Telling on Myself podcast,
where we tell it all.
Hey, but we ain't doing no snitching. I'm your host, Kendrick.
And I'm your co-host, Talia.
So we got a good one lined up today.
We do. Yeah, we do. We're going to talk about getting married for the wrong reasons.
Doom. So when you say getting married for the wrong reasons, let's unpack that. Who was your first example of a married couple, and how did they impact your view of marriage?
Oh, yeah. Definitely my parents, for sure. And I think
it wasn't somebody else?
No.
Oh. Your mama and your daddy was
my
the
mama
first
and my
one.
dad.
Right.
My mama and my pappy. So I think with my parents, for the most part, at the beginning, I think it was good. Like, I felt like I had a good example of what marriage was supposed to be like. But then somewhere along the lines with going through their trials and tribulations and their ups and downs, it got to the point where sometimes I would even tell them, you know, and I'm sure probably somebody here relates, where I was like, Mom, Dad, like, can y'all just get a divorce? Like, I would rather y'all just get a divorce, like, so y'all can just stop arguing so much. And as I got older, I kind of, it's crazy because, like, growing up, I was always a daddy's girl. Like, literally, like, I thought that man could do no wrong, and he is an angel. Rest in peace to my dad. But I think that when you're young, there's so many things that you're just, like, you just don't see, that you don't know. So, like, my mom would always tell me, like, oh, you just don't know how your dad is or whatever. And then when I got older and I was in the house, and I would kind of see how he would push her buttons, like, on purpose. Like, he would say certain things. My dad was a man of very few words, but when he did speak, but he was a very goofy guy. And he was very animated. So to me, it just felt like he could never do something like that. So, but whenever it's like, you know, the difference between how you act with your kids, I know we're not parents, but you see the difference when people act with their kids in comparison to when they act with just their spouse or their person. So as I got older, I kind of got to see that side of him. And I was like telling Mama, I was like, man, like, Dad be trifling sometimes. Like, he be doing some stuff. So I don't know. I felt like it just got more real as I got older. I was just like, wow, okay. So, like, you know, this ish gets real. Like, people, even the person that you think could just do no wrong has their faults. And after that, I think marriage was kind of a little bit tainted for me. I definitely for the longest time thought that it was just a piece of paper, that it was just not necessary. What was your first example of marriage, and how did that shape your thoughts around marriage?
My parents was my first example. And if I, like, think back on what their example of a marriage made me think, it just made me think that marriage was something that you did out of tradition.
Yeah.
Right. And it was like the morally right thing to do. I never really associated it with being, like, deeply in love with a person per se. And the reason why I say that is because growing up, I thought that there were, like, two forms of love. The love that you see on TV and in movies, you know, the lovey-dovey, oh, I love you, you know, all of that good stuff. And then you got reality's version, what I see my mama and daddy love look like.
What was the contrast between what you saw on television as, like, you know, the sitcom?
Well, it wasn't that, because we associated the type of love that we saw on TV with, like, that's what white people do. When you think about how even love was promoted on TV and in films and things, like, especially in the 90s, we were still fighting to try to get certain types of recognition on screen instead of being portrayed as, like, villains and thugs. So, of course, when you look on TV, you see white representation of what their love look like in their family dynamics, softer and caring and nurturing. Like, in my household, it wasn't like that. I'm sure love existed, but it was the country old school version of love, and how that looked was not as affectionate. Just miss all the lovey-dovey stuff.
Right.
So I just thought it was two different versions of love, and reality's version, at least my reality, never incited me to be like, oh yeah, I really want to get married. If that's what I really had to look forward to, I wasn't in a rush for that. And because the other form of love is just TV, it's not real.
Yeah, it seemed like it wasn't reality.
So I'll be having people that be asking me all the time, like, different questions about marriage. Like, I had, like, single friends that be like, what's it like? And how do you deal with this, that, and the third, so on and so forth. And the one of the consistencies that I see with several of my friends, personal friends, is their idea of what marriage is based on a lot of unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
And so they think it's something that it's really not. And so they kind of focus on more superficial things or things that don't really matter that much. You know what I'm saying?
I never really thought about marriage ever. Like, I've been in one long-term relationship. Then I was single for a very short time. I would say like a year and a half. And in that year and a half when I was dating, I never really like thought about like, oh yeah, like I'm looking for a guy to like date, to like marry. Like, even when I was in that long-term relationship, marriage never even crossed my mind. Mind you, of course, I was very young. Like, it was like one of those like high school relationships that went into like early adulthood and then fizzled out. So thinking of marriage was never really a thing for me. I always looked at marriage, like I said earlier, like a piece of paper. Like, I really genuinely thought that there was no benefits to marriage, that it was still the same. It was still the same as like dating long term, that there was no perks of being married. If anything, I would always be like, well, you know, if you just date somebody for a long time, you know, in the state of Texas, that's like, and you live with them, that's
it's like we married.
It's common law or whatever. So it's like the same thing. Like, well, what are the perks of being married? Well, you have a piece of paper. Now that I have gone through life and have seen different things, such as like even losing my dad and the implications of that when you've built a life with somebody. Let's say like you don't believe in marriage, or somebody that don't believe in marriage. Okay, and you built a life with somebody. You've lived with them for, you know, let's say 10 years. You guys have a house. You have all these things. Or let's say the house was only in his name and he's the one that passed away. And now you're not married. There's nothing legally tying you to this person that you have built your whole life with. And maybe let's say you have a kid too. So now like your livelihood depends on the things that he has left behind for you, but they're not left for you. They go to next of kin, not a random person that you were just shacking up with because you're playing house, rather than actually doing it the right way.
Yeah, being married in spirit don't count.
No.
Yeah, being married in your heart.
Yeah.
And everybody knew.
Yeah.
That don't matter when it come down to having to deal with lawyers and judges and
yeah,
estates and
shoot. My parents were married, and I'm still doing stuff for my dad's estate to this day. Like right now, it's been 2 years. So it's like, be very, very careful of who you decide to create a life with without no safety net underneath you.
Like during my dating phases, I definitely wasn't thinking about marriage for real. I grew up in the era of the cool thing was to be player about like situations, relationships, not to seek to have just multiple women per se, but just be a smooth operator. You know what I'm saying? Maybe because my examples were a lot of failed relationships, I went into every relationship I ever had aside from you with an expiration date in mind. So my assumption is like, okay, this would be about 4.5 weeks. You know? Yeah.
So you went into
4 months.
Every relationship or I would call those situationships is what the kids are calling it nowadays. So you went into every situationship with like an expiration date. You kind of knew how long it was going to last, and maybe if
I could assume it.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I could definitely assume it, and it's psychotic to a degree, because it's like, man, if I ask myself like, well, what made me be able to kind of assume how long something would last? When I really dissect that, it's like, well, I was able to recognize different characteristics or patterns, traits, habits, whatever, that I already knew that I wasn't really feeling.
Yeah.
And I knew that I probably could, deal with it for X amount of time. So it's like, yeah, this could last about 4 months, 5 months, 3 months, 2 weeks. You know what I'm saying? Later today. That already was like an unhealthy behavior.
Yeah.
Already you see certain traits about a person that basically are incompatible with you, but for whatever reason, generally it's something superficial.
Yeah.
For whatever superficial reason, you decide to overlook those things that are gonna be or can be problematic for you.
And let's keep it real. A lot of the times, you overlook those things but the sex is good.
Or she just super fine.
Yeah, she's super fine. The sex is good. She gives the gawk. Never mind. But it's true. A lot of the times we let sex cloud our judgment. We let sex is a Band-Aid, basically, whenever you're dating. You guys don't know, but I'm about to tell you, but we actually became celibate. We weren't celibate at first. if we're telling on ourselves. We weren't celibate at the very beginning. It was a very few handful of times, but eventually we just started feeling convicted, and we were like, if we really, when it kind of got to the point where we were months in, maybe like we met in April of 2018, August of 2018, we were already like, we did our pledge to celibacy, because we said, if we're really going to be serious, if marriage is going to be the next step for us, we need to really make sure that we really like each other. Like, not only care about each other, think each other are fine or whatever, like, do we actually like each other? So we went on a year. It was like about a year that we remained celibate, and it was not easy. I think it was harder for me than it was for you, because you had kind of been already
working on it.
Yeah, he was kind of working on it.
Working on it a little bit.
Yeah, and he was on his faith walk and stuff, and I was
working on it from time to time.
But I was definitely not, and I was, it was frustrating at first, because I was like, oh, but I want you, like I know you're the person I want to be with, and as the months kept going on, and I knew definitely that we were definitely going towards like the path towards marriage. I was like, all right, come on, like, we're already gonna get married. Like, come on, let's, but that's just not reality. Like, that's not what we set out to do.
See, I be needing a why. Some people may get caught up with not fully understanding exactly what marriage is. It's very hard to do something effectively, and you don't have the manual or the rule book.
Sure, yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? So you basically just trying to rely on just winging it, just trying something random that you think might be right.
Yeah.
And seeing how that end up. So in our faith walk, just being determined to understand, like, okay, well, where did marriage come from, and what's the point of marriage, the purpose behind it. People throw this word, they used to throw this word around, covenant. And even just understanding like how marriage is like sacrificial, how it's a pledge of allegiance, and how a marriage is meant to make you better. So if I'm being made individually better, and the same is happening for you, then together, like, we can be pretty effective.
At what point in your life did it switch to where you were dating with an expiration date with all your situationships?
So things switched for me as I started doing a little research.
Okay.
So
what kind of research?
The only thing I knew about marriage is that it happened in a church. People get married in churches.
Yeah.
My whole life. So there was some sort of religious association with marriage because it's happening in the church. Two become one and all of that. That's all like biblical. I needed to figure out what a church had to do with it.
Yeah.
So throughout my journey, I had mentors that didn't start out that way. They just kind of became mentor figures. That was teaching me proper theology. And in learning theology, you learn about the reason why God created marriage in the first place. The union, the covenant, the sacrifice. And you learn that the emotional feelings that we associate with love are byproducts of marriage. So I needed a proper understanding of that, because again, what was modeled to me wasn't that. So I had mentors that was teaching me those things along the way. That's where it really like switched in my mind. Dang, marriage actually don't sound that bad. Like, it don't sound that like as dreadful of a thing. When I had a group of older men take me under their wing, they was like, hey, we're older guys and we see you're a younger guy and we want to give you wisdom. And I said, me? And they said, yeah, come with us. And I'm just like,
that's probably how it was.
Yeah, it was something like that, but one guy was African, come with us, anyway. But nah, yeah. So I met a group of guys that for some reason they had some sort of vested interest in me, and they was just like, hey man, we see you on a decent path, but we just want to share some things with you, kind of give you a little wisdom, little game, to help, if we can, facilitate putting you on an even better path. I'm like, all right, cool, that's cool. I ain't got no problem with that. I was raised around older people my whole life, so it kind of put me in a familiar space anyway.
Yeah,
I've only ever been around older people, and
to this day, all you do is hang out with older men in a garage playing dominoes.
Shout out to Uncle C. And all his homeboys. But yeah, being in that space with older men, they really like opened my mind up to like what marriage really was. Understanding that God created marriage. He instituted the very first marriage with the first two humans, Adam and Eve. And when he made it with intentionality. Right. And so in order to understand how to have a effective marriage, they taught me that I needed to go to the manufacturer of marriage to understand how he wanted it done, so that I could understand how to have a quote unquote happy marriage. We associate like certain emotions with love. You know, if I feel happy, oh, I love that, I'm in love. But what I then began to learn is that love and being happy is just a byproduct of marriage. Marriage actually looks like sacrifice, long suffering, also a blissful union. It's not all just negative. What marriage actually does is it plays the role of a refining mechanism, working on patience, working on kindness.
You were doing all the things. You were like courting, opening doors. You were doing everything.
All of the above. I'm doing everything that these old dudes telling me, man, this will make a real man. I'm like, okay, all right. They like, yeah, dudes your age, man, they just little punks. You know, they don't be holding door, they don't do nothing. You know, so just all
I always thought that was interesting. Whenever you and I first met, I never really had guys open doors for me. Chivalry is dead. I was like, that's cute. I was like, okay, yeah, that's nice. You know, I came into it, to be totally honest, like not looking for marriage either, because I had been in a long-term relationship, and then I was in like my single era whenever you met me. So I was like not looking for anything. I was like, man, like I was in such a long relationship, and like I've never really lived, or like I don't even know who I am. And it was crazy because we both kept saying, you kept saying, dude, I'm not trying to, like, I ain't trying to do that. And I'm like, I ain't trying to do that either. But we just kept doing things that kept putting us in the trajectory of, we gonna get married eventually.
She keep rubbing my back and bringing me this, what they call it, them bringing me that salami.
Yeah.
Salami and mush, what they call it, mush?
Mango.
Mango, yeah.
They said mush.
Yeah, bring me that mango.
Dominicans, if you're hearing this, the disrespect.
She started bringing me that mango, that salami, man. Yeah. She says, no, I'm gonna feed you like my mother feeds my dad, but don't think I want to be in a relationship. I said,
I know. It's like you're doing all the things to be in a relationship, but you're saying that you don't want to be in a relationship. So I was like, all right, this is like an oxymoron. Like, this don't even make no sense. Like, we obviously are dating at this point. Like,
I'm not staying with nobody out of convenience. No. And the only reason why I say that with so much passion is because been there, done that.
Oh, you have?
Ah, man, come on, man. Every relationship pretty much before you, man, it was always just a level of convenience. Now, listen, I'm not, man, shout out to everybody I've ever been in a relationship with. I apologize in advance. I don't mean no disrespect. I was just young and just immature. Just thought he knew what to do. Like, you know, I was raised up on the movies and bad information.
Yeah.
I was raised up on the movies and the bad information from the uncles and the cousins and the older siblings who they was only ever indoctrinated with horrible information, and so they preaching that to me as if it's truth. And so all they did was created a little light-skinned monster that
light skin too.
Yeah, man, that, you know, women had the unfortunate experience in me at the time, man. I'm sorry. I'm reformed now. Hopefully you can forgive me. And I don't went against my own convictions. I've had a standard where I'm like, hey, look, I'm not gonna date a woman like this, whatever this may be. Mm-hmm. And I've literally gone against my own standards, whether it be just from lust or just, you know, oh, they're nice, or I see them all the time. It's kind of like the situation when you work with somebody, and you see them all the time, and all of a sudden somebody whom, if you just ran across them and just on the street somewhere, probably really wouldn't even catch your attention like that. But because you just share the same space all the time, you start looking for cute little cues or something.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
staying with somebody out of convenience, or also staying with somebody out of history too. I think a lot of the times we get stuck in relationships because we've been in them for so long, and then that goes into other parts of convenience. Like, oh, we've been together for so long, and we bought this house together, and or we're in this lease for another year, or we got dogs together. Like, there's always something that keeps you from leaving, even though you've either outgrown the relationship or you've already know that this person is not the person that you would want to be married to or just be with in the long term. But we just get stuck, and it's hard to leave. I personally was, in a situation like that try to think that I was mature enough to have a house, have the dogs, have the life, do all the things. And I was very, very young when all this was happening. And when I got to like my mid 20s, I started realizing that me and this person were no longer compatible. I had these dreams for myself. And this person, I knew that if I stayed with that person, that it was not going to happen. And I felt a calling so strong. It took me 2 years to leave. I knew that I wanted to leave 2 years before I left. And because it was just hard, because you're like, oh, well, we this is a 2-income household right now. And like, you even start feeling bad for them. Like, oh, well, how are they going to live without me? Like, how are they going to pay these bills without me? How am I going to pay my bills without them? So then you just keep in that cycle. And then sometimes, you may stay so long that eventually, you grow old and then you feel like, oh, I just can't get back out there again. Like, or you have kids and everything just changes, and then it's kind of hard for you to leave. So I implore you that if you are in a situation like that, the sooner you leave, the better the situation will be, because the less time you waste for yourself and for them. That person deserves to be with somebody. If they're not like abusing you or doing something crazy, they do deserve to be with a person that actually genuinely wants to be with them, and you deserve to be with somebody that you genuinely want to be with.
So let's just say your life is like a book. Where we mess up a lot of times is we'll have a person, and their part was supposed to end in chapter 3. For some reason, we drag them along from chapter 3 to 5 to 12 to 20, and we don't even realize how much of an impact unnecessary characters play. Like, we was just messing around. Now we got a baby together. Oh. Somebody I knew we was never going to be together, but now we got a baby together.
Yeah.
So now the rest of my story is always going to have your imprint on it. Because of like just a little temporary decision, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And then we wonder, whenever we don't let go of certain things or people, we wonder why we aren't reaping other things, because our hands are full. We can't receive other things that you want in life if your hands are full of stuff that you should have let go 10 chapters ago.
So there's this one lady from back home. She's one of my mother's friends, that I knew as a child, like as I was growing up and everything. And they've been married for 30 years or something like that. And she found out I was married, and when I seen her, she was like, hey, so how's it going? How was marriage going and all that? And my genuine response was like, oh, my marriage is great. Like, it's one of the easiest things I've ever done, and I'm genuine when I say that.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm telling the honest to God truth. That's one of the easiest things that I've ever done. And that was my response. And her response is, oh, I hear you. You just keep living. And then she looked at my mom and was like, yeah, he just don't know yet. And I'm like,
no, y'all just got married for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that our marriage is, it's definitely not perfect. I don't want to say, and I don't want to put any unrealistic expectations, but I think our marriage is a pretty healthy marriage. Ups and downs do not involve cheating or anything freaking weird like that. That is not ups and downs. That is trifling and adultery.
The ups and downs. Yeah, he just accidentally cheated again.
Yeah, nah, that's not accidental. That's very on purpose. Our marriage is pretty easy, and I think the reason why it feels easy is because we knew what we were getting ourselves into before we got married. Like, we knew that there was going to be a level of sacrifice to each other, not just me to him because I'm a woman, or him to me because of whatever reason, like, or because I'm like, oh, well, he needs to be, because it's in this day and age, like, my man needs to be able to pay my rent and do this and do that. Like, it wasn't any kind of thing like that. It was a very real expectation of, it's not a 50-50 or an 80-20. It's
100-100. I'm giving you 100% of me. You giving me 100% of you, and we make that work. I'm giving all of me, my understanding, all of my effort, my willingness to play whatever role I need to play in whatever time, season, or whatever I need to play it in.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
Sometimes that may look like I'm the only one with a job. You the only one with a job.
Yeah.
Sometimes it may look like you the only one bringing in money for 6-7 months.
Yeah.
And the roles may reverse
because we're entrepreneurs.
Because we entrepreneurs,
and we're a very untraditional household when it comes to finances. And we both came from working 9 to 5s prior to 2020. I worked in property management, apartments, and he worked in insurance. And there was a time where he stopped working, or he left his job, and then I worked for another 6 months where he wasn't working and I was. And then after that, we both decided to leave our jobs. Then 6 months later, I followed suit. And ever since then, we've been doing, our entrepreneurial adventures, our ventures, within real estate, social media, merch, our podcast, the PCOS, Baddie Club, all different things that we're doing. So sometimes, you're always hustling and you're always trying to figure things out. And, sometimes I'm drained because I'm doing my thing. And I'm like, man, today, like when I say it's not 50-50 and you say it's 100-100, I say you have to have these 3 things with your spouse. If I can only give you 80% because I'm fresh, I'm good, and you can only give me 20, that's our 100. We made it work today. And then there's days where you have the 75 and I only have 25. Like, man, I can only give you this. This is my 100% today is 25% of our whole. But then there's times where you may be drained and I may be drained and we're both drained. So that's when you come together with your spouse and you tell them, okay, you really ain't got it today. I really ain't got it today. So we just gonna have to power through and do our best. And you may not be in a good mood today. I may not be in a good mood today because our batteries are low. So we need to figure out what does that look like whenever we're both not really feeling our best, rather than, oh, well, I'm not feeling good, so you got to catch me today, and vice versa. Like, yes, there's room for that. And there are days like that, but there are also days where you're both drained and you got to have a game plan of what does it look like whenever both of you are not feeling your best, and you can't make up that 100.
I think our marriage works the way that it does because communication is a lifeline. One thing that helped our communication for me in a weird, twisted, psychotic type of way. In the very beginning, doing and saying things that I thought were extreme. Surely she won't be able to deal with this. Oh yeah, this will be TMI. This will be too much information for her. She won't know what to do with this. Oh, this will surely make her head for the hills after she hears that I'm this level of psychotic. I was just playing a game, and the game that I was playing was, let me see how much she can tolerate. Really, let me see if I can gauge the expiration date.
Yeah.
Because I was basically reverting back to what I was on before I ran across these old guys.
But don't do that. That's toxic.
Yeah. And what that did for us inevitably was open up dialogue. It opened up an opportunity for us to have any type of conversation, really, on any subject matter. We
could talk about anything, and I appreciate that. I think that we have definitely I think the basis of it all is that we can be, more than anything, we could be friends, and we could actually like each other, and I think one of the first things that drew me to you was your conversation and your emotional intelligence. That was really attractive to me. I was like, man, like, this is not, especially because I've been single for a while, so I was like, going on these little dates, and guys were like, yeah, I just caught these Jordans, like, oh yeah, like, just talking about frivolous stuff, and I was just like, all right, that's cool, bro, like, cool, whatever. And then the first 5 minutes I meet you and you're like, Miss Talia. Mind you, I'm at work. I met him when I was a leasing agent at work, and he was coming in for an apartment. His first question to me was, Miss Talia, where do you see yourself in 5 years? In 19, 20, 21, 22. Sitting right now, it has been 5 years from him asking me.
I bet when I asked you that question, Miss Talia, where you think you gonna be in 5 years? However you said it, I said it.
You did not sound
where you think you gonna be in 5 years? I bet you never would have been like, well, on July 15th, we'll probably be recording a podcast on the outskirts of Dallas together.
In our home.
While being married.
Yeah, that's crazy. He was saying that he's psychotic into, like, all the things that he basically did to kind of test to see if there was going to be an expiration date with me. I think that's toxic. Again, do not do that. But it does take another psychotic person to continuously play along to see how long it was going to take for me to be like, all right.
Who gonna crack first?
Yeah, who gonna crack first? And I was going to be like, I remember telling you, like, oh, it's been 6 months. And he's like, other girls have been around for 6 months before.
Yeah, bro, you think what you want, a cookie? Oh, it's been 6 months. Man, I talked to a chick that lasts for 6 months and 8 hours.
Right. And I was like,
nothing, that ain't been done.
I was like, all right, whatever. And then, but I knew it was real whenever he took me to his hometown to see his family. And then in the same turn, I brought you to my parents' house, even though I had been single and kind of dating I was like, dating a few people here and there. And I never thought, yeah, let me bring these people to my parents' house to have them eat a home cooked meal from my mom. Like, nah, like I wasn't doing that until you, because, we played long enough to crack each other.
Boy, when I got here for the first time and I was like, man, they speak Spanish for real.
Yeah.
Well, you say you what again? Dominican?
Dominicana.
Oh, wow.
Somos dominicanos.
Dang,
La patria.
She really speaks Spanish. I just thought they were really just like light-skinned black for real.
Yeah, and now
her English was so good.
And I learned English second. Ain't that about it? We hope this episode gave you some insight on marriage, on the right reasons and the wrong reasons to get married, and hopefully whatever situation or situationship that you are currently in, that you are able to have better discernment if you should stay or not. So y'all know what it is. You got to subscribe to our channel. Also, make sure that you follow our TikTok and our Instagram. This is our email for collabs. Like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.
Until next time.
Peace.
Peace.